Hi, my name is Robbin Miller. I am the host of Miller Chat. I am so happy to say that my guest today is Dr. Harvey Clermont, who needs no introduction as he has his own show, Senior Centered on Shrewsbury Media Connection,
Right, and the exercise program.
and
too.
the exercise. But today he's not there to talk about exercise, but we're here to talk about some major health issues that affect us. And I felt it would be a great idea to have somebody who's knowledgeable, who's trustworthy, and people listen. So
I hope
appreciate,
so. I
Yep,
hope
and people
so.
do listen to. So I appreciate you coming on to talk about. We're going to be talking about monkeypox and flu, right?
Right.
COVID, other things. So why don't we start with monkeypox and the virus?
Right. We might as well start with the one that's the closest, I guess, to us in the media right now, and that's monkeypox. Before we do talk a little bit about it, I want to make sure everybody knows what a virus is. A virus is just a single cell, basically. Just has that DNA or RNA in the middle and a little protein coat. That's it. You can't even see it with a microscope. That's how small it is. But the basic thing about any virus is that it cannot replicate. It cannot produce other virus unless it's in a host. So that's where the infectious part comes in. Especially when you get hosts that are not just human, they can be animal to human, which is basically what all these are, animal to human. So let's talk a little bit about monkeypox.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, it's not a new disease. This is a DNA virus. All of the pox viruses are DNA viruses. As you remember, COVID is RNA virus.
Oh,
But
okay.
that's it just tells you about the size of the virus. That's all it tells you. All of them have the same characteristics. They're all viruses. But this was first diagnosed as a monkeypox back in 1958, back in Denmark. And why monkeypox? Because they identified it in monkeys. So that's how it got its name. Of course, a crazy name, but that's the name. And had several little outbreaks then in Africa. That began back in 1970. They had outbreaks in Central Africa and in West Africa. Two different variants of the monkeypox. And so the Central African variety was much more virulent. It affected everybody, child all the way up. Whereas the West African one was less virulent. So it was mostly middle age, but it could affect anybody. So now we have actually three, but fortunately the ones in the United States are all West African. So it's not as virulent, but let's tell you a little bit about it. First of all, if you look at the numbers, why did it suddenly jump in numbers? Why did it suddenly get worldwide,
Right.
all of a sudden from Africa? Well, we're a worldly nation, let's face it. We travel. Even the animals get brought over. Somebody wants a pet. So that's exactly how it happens.
A monkey?
No, wasn't a monkey, actually. In 2003, we had a monkeypox outbreak. 47 people got it from prairie dogs. What they did is they mixed prairie dogs with other animals that came from Africa, and
Okay.
and that's how it spread. But at any rate, now we have roughly 17,000 cases in the United States. Roughly only about less than 20 are in kids, less than 20. See, and my show is usually about elderly, and not many in elderly either. Why? Because it's in that mid-age range. And most of them, 95%, are male. And yes, they are. A lot of the males are in that LGBT group. And you say, well, that's not that many. Well, when you look at the statistics, anywhere between 8 to 10% of the United States is LGBTQ. You don't want to admit it, but it is. It's acceptable, for God's sakes. But why men and not women? Don't have that answer yet. Don't have it. But it's mostly LGBT gay men in that age range from 20 to 40. That's where the peak is with the monkeypox cases. So, how do you diagnose it? Well, first of all, you diagnose it with the symptoms. If you get exposed to monkeypox, which is basically a contact exposure, so it's contact. You got to have tissue fluid or tissue. So it's a contact. Now that tissue fluid can be the fluid from lesions on the skin. It can be saliva. It can be semen. So anything that is a liquid in a patient who has been exposed to monkeypox, that's where it gets transmitted. So what are the symptoms that you get? Well, once you get exposed to it, usually within 3 to about 14 days, you'll begin to have symptoms. So there's a short period there where it's incubating, basically. And then once you get your symptoms, what symptoms do you get? Well, you get a little low-grade fever, headache. You begin to get a rash. It starts out as just a little reddish rash, usually on face, genitals, could be in the arms and legs too, but it usually starts face and neck or genitals, in the United States anyway. And so you get this reddish rash, then it advances to what they call a papular rash, little bumps. The little bumps then break open. They become little vesicles, little blebs, break open because it itches like hell. And so you scratch it, breaking it open, then it scabs over. That whole process takes roughly about 2 weeks of the rash all the way to the scab. Oh, wow. Scab falls off. Anytime you have that rash, you're infectious. So if you've been exposed to monkeypox, what do?
You go to school.
Yeah, I guess,
Right.
but you should quarantine. And you should quarantine actually up to 3 weeks because it's infectious. Some more than 2 weeks. They pick that 3-week period of isolation, basically. And it's not just isolation yourself. It's all the clothing that touches that rash. It's all of the utensils you use to eat. It's the bedding that you sleep on, the towels that you wipe yourself with. All those things have that fluid, which has the virus. Wow. So you have to consider all those things. So what do? So let's say that you're going to school. I'm talking to parents now of the children. And I'm talking to the kids too, because sometimes the parents don't listen, you know. But what do you do if you have a child who suddenly contracts monkeypox in the school? Does the school have a policy? I don't know. I tried to find out. I don't know if they have a specific policy. What they have, there's a whole sheet. What they do is they will follow the state regulations. And you look up the regulation, and it's multiple. You go crazy if you look at all of them. But specifically for monkeypox, do they have a protocol? Maybe they do. But unless they tell you about it, what the heck? What good is it? So that's one question the parent should ask the school. Number two, if you're worried about contracting monkeypox, there is a PCR test. You've heard that PCR before. That's what we use to diagnose COVID, PCR test. And you usually just use tissue fluid. You can use the saliva. You can use off one of the lesions on somebody's mouth or whatever it is, and put it into the PCR and find out if you got monkeypox or not, or at least the pox vaccine or the pox virus. So that's how you diagnose it. So is it available around here? I don't know. Not easy to find out. No. So is it available? What is your protocol for the rest of the students who may have been exposed one way or another? You know, kids, they love to hug. They share utensils. They share things, you know. So it is an issue in the schools.
Can you get it on a desk?
You can get it, yes, contact. Let's say that somebody who has a lesion puts their arm down on the desk or a book or their iPad. God, they all have phones. God, I would not touch that phone, I'll tell you. They carry it with them all the time. But yes, how do you clean the school if somebody has monkeypox? Even one person. Do you change your cleaning protocol? That's another question I would ask the school department. What is your protocol for cleaning if somebody in that class has monkeypox? Even if it's one. So those are the three little questions that I would have people ask the school. Because, like I said, not easy to find out. You can find out faster than I can, probably, you know.
Because of an interest.
So that's where we are. So basically, I was immunized I think about age 3 or 4. I got my smallpox vaccine. Thank God for Dr. Jenner. He's the one who originated all that. He used the old cowpox. He used cowpox, and what they did is they just put a little drop on your skin and use a little, I guess probably a needle, but just barely get it into the skin itself. It's the intradermal type of injection. But it is a live virus. It is a live virus. It's attenuated, isn't going to cause the disease, but still live, and it can transmit. So that's the one thing about the intradermals is that stuff that comes out, that leaks and all, until you get a scab and it falls off, that is infectious.
So we get the vaccine?
Right, and we do have vaccine for prevention. Again, I always rail on the federal government and all, how incompetent some of them seem to be, but yeah, I guess most of the stuff they do is fine. But here they are. They've just been through, or going through still, an epidemic with COVID, and they vowed, even though they screwed it up with COVID, we're going to do things differently. And here they are with monkeypox, same thing, exactly the same thing. We've got preventative medicine. Okay. And the politicians say we're going to release it. 1 million doses. Wow, 1 million doses. Wow. And a month later, people in say in New York City and in the real hubs of where they're getting the monkeypox, where's the vaccine? Where is it? Well, it takes time. Oh, okay. Well, then why did you announce it, for God's sakes? And apparently the number of doses that they released were totally inadequate. Totally inadequate. Remember I mentioned 8 to 10% of the population is LGBTQ. Now, we're talking gay men, so that's only a portion of that, but still almost 2 million. And they were going to release 1 million doses. Well, totally inadequate. And so what did the CDC do? They said, well, let's take that dose, which was a sub-Q injection. It's an injection, 2 injections. It's still available, 2 injections. They said, let's divide it up into 5 drops. And then we'll just do like we did with the old smallpox vaccine. We can get 5 doses that way. Well, where's the data that says that that's okay? Well, there was a paper. Oh, God. Here they are. They're supposedly the experts in the field, and here they're supposing, this is all just theory on their part, that it's going to work by dividing it up and giving it this way. So, I don't know. I said, they didn't learn. I guess they never learned, do they? Huh?
Well, is it okay if we shift now with COVID, or did you want to talk about the flu?
We can talk about COVID.
Okay.
Let's do that. Why not? It's still in the news, and it will be in the news, just like the flu. It's going to continue to be in the news, period. And what happens is that tremendous numbers of mutations. And what is the latest? Well, the latest is that there's a new vaccine now that's had emergency use authorization. And it supposedly will target the Omicron 4 and 5. And the CDC said, well, you got to put in the original Wuhan one too. So, okay. So it's a bivalent. In other words, it's covering the original Wuhan virus and the Omicron 4 and 5. Is that adequate? What is the data that shows that it's adequate? Well, we don't have all that because, it seems to work, it seems to be safe. Okay. Well, I don't know. When you look at what's happening, and it's happening rapidly, these things mutate every day. And so what's happening now is we're beginning to see a new Omicron, Omicron 4.6. That's not covered. Well, I don't know. It should be. Yeah, it should be. Not covered. Now we have roughly 8% of all of the infections now that are occurring are Omicron 4.6. Well, what about Omicron 2.75? Did that ever pan out? Well, we're still watching that. Okay. And let me tell you the latest thing on it. If you look at the latest research from the World Health Organization, a new virus now is coming out of Wuhan. Totally different. Totally different. And they even gave it a name. If I can find the damn name, because it's so darn new, I don't even know what the name of it is.
I didn't hear that in the press conference.
You probably did. Neocove. Neocove.
Okay,
Neocove is the name.
Okay.
And what's going to happen with that? Well, we don't know. Okay, but what that proves, though, is that this thing is mutating faster than we can keep up. So what it boils down to is, should you get the new vaccine that's going to be available in a week or two? I think that with COVID, at my age, I'm 82, at my age, I'll probably get it. Because it's been 6 months now since I had the last booster. I had my 2 boosters. And it did help. No question. I never had a positive test. So it did help. I'm going to get the booster. I'll probably have to get a new booster with the new ones that are out, maybe in 3-4 months.
Right.
So we'll just keep getting boosters. That's all you can do, basically. Okay. And that includes kids. Remember, this new booster is for, if you get the Pfizer, it's down to age 12 and up. And the Moderna will be 18 and up. And again, it's, as I mentioned, it's a bivalent type of vaccine.
I heard yesterday on the White House conference, they were talking about a yearly COVID. Do you agree with that? A yearly COVID? Is that
Well, if you listen to the president, or the CEO, I should say, of Pfizer, he'd love to have you get your boosters every 4 months. You know how much money they made last year? $6 billion. But, it's a good company. They have a lot of stuff available, and I can't argue with them. Moderna is arguing with them. They think that Pfizer stole their technology, so they're in the courts.
We probably knew that. We have like a couple of minutes.
Want to quickly talk about polio?
Sure, and the flu.
Because that is also in the news. We did have a couple of cases of polio. One which was a paralytic polio. And when you understand that 1 in 200 cases of polio causes paralysis, if one person comes in with paralysis, there is a definite number of people out there with polio. And so they looked at the wastewater. That's another way you can diagnose, or you can see if it's in the community or not. And it is in the wastewater. So if you've been immunized against polio, you're safe. If you have never been immunized against polio, I would highly suggest that you get your polio vaccine. 3 doses at intervals. If you've had your polio vaccine and somebody in the community comes down with polio, even if you've been immunized, get a booster. That's basically the bottom line.
Is that in the household or is that in the community? I mean, what do you mean like a new one? Does it have to be in the household?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, no, in the community. If it's in the community.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Because that is very contagious.
Have we had one yet in Shrewsbury?
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, none in Shrewsbury.
Okay.
None in Shrewsbury. I hope we don't get it. But you have to change your whole thought process once it's in the community. So if they should look at our wastewater. If it's in our wastewater, it's in the community.
I don't know if they're doing that.
Because remember, that's fecal to oral.
Oh.
It's fecal to oral. Wash your hands. Clean the surfaces. Especially that. Oh, I forgot to tell the kids too. Wash the covers of your books. Wash your telephone. Sterilize it practically every hour, because you're on it every hour.
Right.
So you need to really clean the surfaces. You need to wash your hands frequently. That is the best thing that you can do. And I should tell the kids, when you're in the classroom, I would highly suggest you wear your mask. I know that's not what they're saying, and I know they're not wearing them, but if my kid were in the class, they're going to wear a mask. I don't care what anybody else says.
Well, that's a good point. Well, we have 5 minutes left. You want
5 minutes. My God.
Did you want to talk more about the flu?
We can talk about the flu.
Yep.
Yeah, interesting stuff about the flu. It's every year they define what's going to be in the flu vaccine. And they make it very species specific. What I mean by that is, you remember back when we had the H1N1, the big thing, the H1N1, we gave out special shots for that and all. Well, the H and the N are two proteins that bind the virus to the human host. And so they define it by all these different proteins, H proteins and N proteins, H1N1, H3N2. Those are the two main ones, and they are in the present vaccine. Also, those are both influenza A viruses or vaccine, and there are two Bs. They change them a little every year. Should you get them? Hell yes. I would definitely get it. Why not? It's not like you're going to get sick like you do occasionally with the COVID vaccine. You're not going to get sick with it. You may get a little soreness. That's it. But you're protected. You got to look at the statistics. A lot of people die. A lot of people die from flu. And yes, they are people who may be immunocompromised. Well, incidentally, what does it mean to be immunocompromised?
Yeah, I always wondered that.
How do you know if you're immunocompromised? Well, first of all, if you've ever had your spleen taken out, if you are on chemotherapy, but not targeted chemotherapy. So you got to ask your doctor if you're on chemo whether you're immunocompromised or not. So automatically you're not immunocompromised just being on chemo. Oh. That was another point that I need to talk.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah. So if it's targeted to a specific solid tumor, then you probably are still safe. So that, but you got to ask your doctor if you are targeted or not. So what else? Well, you may just be getting a lot of infections, and the infections that you get are usually much worse than the average person who gets the infection. Okay. You wonder, is my immune system screwed up? You may be. It may be. When we talk immune system, we're talking about your white blood corpuscles, your white cells. Those are the ones that produce the antibodies, the liquid antibodies that are floating, and they are the ones, too, that give you the immunity in the long term. In other words, they have memory cells. Those are the white blood cells that are in your blood. So all the white blood cells are in there to fight infection, all of them. They're all there to fight infection. And so if you're not in one of the genetic defects, and usually the genetic ones you'd know because it's in the family, and you would know about those. But all the other things, like the lack of the spleen, multiple infections, the untargeted or usually the blood chemotherapy like lymphoma, leukemia, myeloma. Those are the blood ones. They're all non-targeted. You are immunocompromised after that. All the people who have had that in the past remain immunocompromised in the future. A lot of breast cancer, colon cancer and all, they've been treated successfully, but they are not able to generate a response in the future either against a new virus, unfortunately. So definitely you need to get immunized, not with a live virus though, not with a live virus.
Okay, one more question. We have less than a minute. So when's the best time to get the flu shot?
Best time is to get it in October. We look at the spikes from last year. When was the flu around? Always. Usually there's a spike in December and a spike usually in February. You want to be protected for both of those two little spikes in the incidence. So if you get it too early, like right now, they say, oh, get it now, get it now. Baloney. That's ridiculous. They have no clue what they're talking about. You get it in late October, you'll be protected well for the December spike and for the spring spike.
Well, we end with that. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Clermont, for coming on my show.
Oh, listen, we could talk all day about
Yes,
some
we
of
can.
these things, you know. In fact, I'm going to have a little show on immunizations again in the future, and we'll talk about a bunch of different things that are good for kids and adults, too.
Well, thank you very much for coming on my show.
That's great. It's been a pleasure.
You're welcome. All right. See you next month.